Hello computer gamers, this is Insomniac Andrew, and I will be discussing some champions today. Let's see, well, I'm not 0 LP anymore. How many, was I 12 actually, maybe? Yeah, anyway, and then I went to 0, and then I'm back to 16, so not really a whole lot of excitement. I really should be playing more, but there's a new program that I downloaded that's probably going to help me out a little bit, because I'm able to check and see, which players are where, like which division they're in and so on, what are the runes and masteries, that kind of thing I'll even know. So that's pretty cool. But like it's, and it records my replays too, which is really nice. Actually, there's another program that didn't seem to work. At least I assume it's not working, so I went ahead and uninstalled it. But this other one seemed to work really good, and it actually colors my health bars too, which is something that I was hoping that they would have be a thing in Dota 2, but it's not a thing yet. So that's a bit disappointing. There is the colorblind mode where the health bars do get slightly different colors, but in this other program you're able to change colors to whatever you want. Yellow, teal, purple, anything. So it's pretty nice. Right now I think my favorite is to have like the opponents be like a brownish color, and then yourself and your allies pretty like really light colors, like kind of greenish or just super close to white or whatever. And there's colors for shields and stuff too, but whatever. So anyways, that's actually gonna, I guess, cut down on the visual confusion that I might have. Now I don't necessarily have like red-green color blindness, but I do have difficulty sometimes with just having too much of certain colors. Just seeing them on the screen, it kind of wear out my eyes, so having easier to look at colors helps. So, last episode was episode 20. That should be uploading to YouTube right about now. The upload to the XSplit itself is done, so now XSplit is uploading it to YouTube. That was Olaf and Vayne. And before we go and talk about Udyr and Urgot for this episode, I wanted to clarify a few things from last episode. Okay, last episode I forgot to mention that yes, Vayne does use mana for her spells. Of course, she doesn't really have mana issues for the most part, though. So it's not really something you really need to worry about. But I mean, if you do want to build Mana Mune on her, I mean, you can. Not that she really needs the mana, but it's fine. Like, it would be better on somebody like Varus, for example, because he can really run dry on his mana if he really spams his first skill a lot for poking. But for her, you don't spam your jump, and that's pretty much the only thing that costs any mana for her. So, and then another thing, I just wanted to make it clear that neither her or Olaf have ability power scaling at all. They don't use ability power at all, and then they both have that true damage. So they're pretty interesting in that regard. I'm not sure how they compare to Aurelia, for example. I have to wait until she's free to play, maybe to check her out, or maybe. Oh, actually, I probably don't. I could just go through the spectator client, just like watch people play and just look at the tooltips for abilities and stuff like that in the game. But in the meantime, I did some research on these other guys. So I just wanted to point that out. Actually neither of them are doing magic damage either. So it's a disadvantage for them that they don't have ability power, but they they get an advantage back. They aren't able to use some of those items or whatever. That's fine. But if you consider it like something like a Trinity Force, if you still want to buy that on Olaf, the Spellblade effect itself is still very effective on him, and the only gold you're spending for mana, effectively, is 435 gold. So if you think about it, that's really not very much for as powerful as the Spellblade ability is. I think it's still a very good item to build on Olaf. As for Vayne, I'm not really sure if she would want Trinity Force or not, because she is ranged, so I'm not really sure what her base damage value is. I know all the ranged ones are generally lower than the melee ones. As for Olaf, I think his base damage at level 18 is like 112 perhaps, which is pretty good. Vayne's, I would imagine, is around 100 or so, but I don't know. It could be lower, I'm not really sure. But she's pretty strong as a champion, so being that Trinity Force gives kind of relatively rounded stats, it wouldn't be so bad on her, to be honest. So I don't really know what to think about that. But anyway, yeah, there's all that. So there's no utility from building AP on her, just whatever items, whatever actives and passives they have, and that might be why you would want to buy it. So yeah, so they're pretty cool because they do have that true damage, though. Like with Vayne, it scales with the tankiness of the opponent, and because it checks their maximum health percentage. And for Olaf, he's able to increase it by building up more attack damage. And whereas before, I actually was a little confused and thought, well, maybe it scales a little bit with ability power, but I wasn't sure. And then I played him again, and I was like, oh wait, no, there's no AP scaling at all. So we're definitely clear on that. There's no AP scaling on him whatsoever. So today, I think we talked enough about Olaf and Vayne from last episode. Let's jump into Udyr and Urgot. So I've played these guys before. I have not actually played them through this week, but I did go into a custom game with them and make some notes and compare it with what I know from playing them in the past. I played Urgot, of course, in Nemesis Draft. I'm not sure if I played him during a free-to-play week or not, but I know I played Udyr during a free-to-play week, for sure. So, what's Udyr like? Well, he's got a really cool basic ability because it boosts his attack speed and movement speed, and it can stack. So he basically changes his stances, which he can do for free, and they have like ridiculously low cooldowns, if I remember right, if any cooldowns at all. So I want to say he's extremely flexible. So, and then his ultimate does have a much bigger cooldown. Anyway, he's definitely doesn't play like any of the other champions, and to be honest, if I were to try to compare him to anything in Dota 2, it'd be like the closest I could come to him would be like Lone Druid, I guess, because he can like morph into his ultimate form. Well, the funny thing about this guy is he basically has 4 different forms, so, and that's literally all he is he's just the different forms. So that's interesting. And once again, I'm not like, when comparing him to somebody like Jinx, it reminds me of Jinx and her weapon switching. Like, what happens if you don't have any abilities learned? Like, you're level 1, you didn't learn anything yet, then what? Like, you don't have any persistent effects or any activation stuff. So, yeah, that's what happens. When you switch over, then there's an activation and there's a persistent effect. So it's effectively like you cause something to happen, and apparently these all have mana costs too. So it's like 55 for the first and third, and 50 for the second, and I guess it doesn't cost any mana for the ultimate, perhaps, or it's just the mana cost is not showing in the tooltip. I mean in the preview screen, whatever. So Um, he's able to move faster and attack faster by switching up his stances. So that's handy to know. Now, he's a very strong champion. Like, I want to say he's not as good as Braum, but he's still quite reliable and strong. Of course, he does cost significantly less IP, so there's that. Anyways, so when he goes into his bear stance, he gets a boost of movement speed, which allows him to run away and chase, which is awesome. Plus, he's going to stun a target for 1 second once he attacks anything. And this happens on everything, but it's got the effect can't occur on the same target for several seconds. So it's very similar, if not the same thing, as Callista and her partner doing their magic damage proc when they both attack the same target. Whereas for him, it requires no ally. And it's kind of similar to Braum's, basically a basic attack, stunning a target, except in this case, you cannot stun as often as you could with Braum, but it's still a bit more reliable because it's like basically the first attack, bam, you're stunned, and that's pretty awesome. So it's a little bit easier to get a stun off, I guess, right away, compared to the Braum, but overall I would say the Braum stun is still better. But this is still pretty cool because he can increase his movement speed. Of course, it still doesn't compare to Braum's jump, which is a different ability, but still. But yeah, Udyr can be really annoying, and I actually would imagine that he could be even more effective with a Hydra than Braum would be. You know how I theorized probably that Hydra with Braum, he could stun a whole bunch of enemies, or get them all stunned up. He still kind of needs to get attack speed, right? If he wants to get them all stunned up, or his ally needs to get like runes and stuff like that. So that's still reliant on a lot of different things. With Udyr, literally all he has to do is just attack once with his Hydra, and then everything that gets hit by it gets stunned. That seems a lot stronger. Of course, this is just a theory of mine. I'm not sure if Hydra will actually work like that with Udyr's bear stance, but I would assume it does. If you guys want to let me know if it does or not, that would be great if you've been playing Udyr a lot more. Anyways, moving on. Actually, after I get like a lot of the champions that I really like a lot, including Braum, then I might purchase Udyr, who knows. But in the meantime, I don't know, and I don't care to figure out the Hydra thing, if it's super good on him or not. Which it probably is. I think it's better on him than on Braum, but moving on. So how does the turtle stance work? And once again, it's only 1 second, so it's not like the end of the world. Oh, everyone got stunned for 1 second. It's still pretty handy though. It's pretty cool. I like it. Now, his second ability, he activates it. It gives him a shield absorbing damage, which is really cool. And then it also gives him lifesteal while he's in this stance. So that is really cool because it gives him a way to survive, like actually 2 ways to survive. And I mean, what else can you say about it? It makes him good with armor or magic resist, whatever you want to build. So that's neat. And you obviously want to build damage on him so that way you can benefit from the lifesteal. And then moving on, so his first ability going into the tiger stance, so this is going to be increasing his attack speed for a few seconds upon activation. So you could transfer over to your second one and be life-stealing if you're in danger of dying. So it's kind of like you can go kind of back and forth between the different stances in order to optimize your attack pattern or defense pattern or whatever. Of course, it says that his first basic attack after activation will do a high amount of damage over 2 seconds. So a little bit like an ignite, I guess. And then his basic attacks will deal extra damage while he's in this form. Now I took some notes. We went over the first 3 abilities. You want to keep in mind what types of damage these abilities are doing. So I wrote down okay to add that. First one is attack damage scaling and it's physical damage, like you might expect. But you know, you might not be sure about it. So yeah, even that damage over time is scaling with your AD, I believe. And then for his turtle, that is scaling with ability power. And ability power both can increase the damage you're absorbing. Wait, no, that's all it does, I think. Yeah. I want to say it adds to your lifesteal, but I don't think it does. Moving on. So, this one here, though, it doesn't scale with his attack damage or his ability power, except for the fact that, you know, if you do have more attack speed, then theoretically you get more attacks while the target's stunned, obviously. Or you can just attack more targets if you want to attack each of them one at a time, I guess. And that's probably a totally legit thing, too. But, you know, it's like whatever. So, and then, of course, the more damage you're dealing, the more you get out of that stun. But primarily, I would say his third one is really good for your allies because you're able to get into position to help them out and stun somebody that might be trying to kill them. I think that's pretty valuable as kind of a support aspect of the champion. Like every champion needs to have some way that they can support their team, unless of course they just kind of like destroy the enemy. If that's their focus, then that's cool too. But you know, this ability doesn't really destroy the enemy as much as his first skill does. His first one is the main offense one, right? Because it does the high amount of damage and it deals extra damage on basic attacks. So, but yeah, it's still like he's a fairly well-rounded champion because of his various stances. So that's pretty cool and something to think about. That you know, not every champion is well-rounded, but he is one of those champions that is relatively well-rounded. So if I would recommend him to new players, yeah, I would say he is really solid. He's not exactly like gonna be one of my favorites or anything, but yeah, I mean, I'd say he's a lot better in the long run compared to somebody like Tarek. You know, even though Tarek has like his situations where he's gonna shine in for sure, and you know, definitely be better than Udyr. Udyr just in general is probably a much safer pick for like ranked, I guess, and just if you really want to have a higher win rate in general, then Udyr is probably a much better pick than somebody like Tarek would be, for example. I think you could pick him more often, I guess I could say, and be more confident that you're gonna have a really good chance of winning. Well, I don't feel that way about Tarek, even though I really like Tarek as a champion. I feel like he's a really strong one. There's just a lot of situations where he just kind of fails, and I guess a lot of it has to do with the limited value of like his teamwork, you know, and his the fact that his cooldowns and stuff. Like Udyr doesn't have to worry about cooldowns as much compared to somebody like Tarek. So you know, you just stand in your bear stance, you just stun everyone for 1 second. That's pretty cool. That's something that Tarek absolutely can't do. So there's a lot of flexibility in Udyr, and like in your games in general, you'll find that flexibility is a great asset in a champ. So anyways, so moving on. So what's his ultimate? His ultimate has ability power scaling, and it does magic damage. So Udyr does have a source of magic damage, so that's pretty cool. So he has attack damage and ability power scalings. Now, how does this work, his ultimate? He activates it, it gives him like some immolation basically. So, you know, like Warlock's Golem. So he basically becomes the Golem, so that's pretty awesome. Of course, it only lasts for 5 seconds though, so it's not permanently while he's in this stance. But while he's in the stance, the first basic attack and every third attack after, Udyr engulfs enemies in front of him with flames. So I'm not exactly sure. Oh yeah, I think both of these scale on ability power most likely in this case. So the more ability power you have, basically the more the enemies are going to get hurt. And this is pretty cool because it's, as you can see, the flames cloak him, for 5 seconds, and then constantly while he's in the form, it inflames just like in an area around him. So it kind of gives him like a free Hydra, except I guess it's magical, and it probably doesn't. Well, no, it wouldn't proc the stun because he isn't even in that stance. But I don't think it procs on hit effects, most likely, but it's still pretty cool. I guess it's similar to Cho'Gath's third ability, where he is able to hit enemies in an area for magic damage. Did we even go over Cho'Gath yet? I don't think we did. Imagine that. Okay, so that's pretty much everything you need to know about Udyr. He doesn't have any true damage, but he's obviously really flexible and scales really well with attack damage and ability power, and he does physical and magical damage. So pretty awesome guy. Moving on. So Urgot, what is he like? Okay, I made some rough notes on him, and forgive me if I probably am going to get a few things wrong on him, if anything. But I've watched him being played a lot relatively recently. Man, there's something wrong with my throat. I should take some throat medicine, actually. So, what's he like? First things first, I forgot about Urgot's basic ability, or it changed relatively recently. So I've probably made some really bad plays playing against Urgot in general, or maybe even playing with him, who knows. So what's his basic ability all about? I'm not sure what it looks like at level 18, but at level 1 it reduces target's damage by 15% for 2.5 seconds. So this really cuts down on his enemy's ability to just bring him down really fast. So that could be really frustrating. And so it happens whenever he attacks something. So that's pretty nuts. Like, I want to say this guy could probably solo dragon, Ugh. So, yeah, I mean, so watch out for that is what I was trying to say. Now his first ability, where were we? Forgot. So his first ability is scaling off of attack damage, and it is physical damage. Now this is a skill shot, and his abilities have like this forced synergy. So okay. So it's a little complicated because okay. So the tooltip doesn't say it, but it says it in game, and it was confirmed by the gameplay. So although I say it's a skill shot, it can become a reliable attack. But first you have to land your third ability, which is also a skill shot, on someone. So if you land that, I guess, on a champion, then for a short amount of time, I don't really know how much time, it will allow you to land your first skill on them. Now the cool thing about the third ability is it'll reduce the enemy's armor, I guess, by a significant amount. I'm not really sure. It's probably a flat amount at any rate. And it is physical damage, and it scales with your attack damage. Now, I marked it as utility. I'm not sure if that was accurate or not, but I think the utility is the fact that it transforms your first ability into a homing attack. So, and I think the range on it becomes ridiculous too. So keep that in mind. if you get hit by that green nastiness, then he might follow up with his first ability. And I think his first ability costs him a lot of mana. I'm not sure how similar it is to like Cassidy's ultimate or whatever. Maybe it just I'm not really sure about the mana costs on this guy, but he definitely uses mana, and things like Mana Moon are definitely really solid choices on him. Now, with that said, he also scales with ability power. So let's check that out. His second ability scales with ability power, and it gives him utility. So the more ability power you have, the stronger the shield is, effectively. And that's what that does. Also, while the shield is active, I guess that means if somebody hasn't destroyed it yet or hasn't timed out, I don't really have enough experience with Urgot to know anything different. I just will assume that. That allows his first ability to slow the target. So that could be pretty cool, because I believe the cooldown is like 1 second or something ridiculous like that. So if you've marked them with that green goose, you can home in on them. You'll slow them down and you keep hitting them with that. If you got a good chase going on, and then you could really wreck them, I would imagine. So be careful with that goose stuff or whatever, because he can really wreck you. What else? So that's pretty much about it. For his first 3 abilities, there isn't much else to say. So they all kind of have that force synergy together, where the second and the third one both will affect the first one. Now, how does his ultimate work? His ultimate, this boosts his defense, which obviously has synergy with his basic ability. The defense boost is like flat. I think at level 1 it might be like 50 armor magic resist. I'm not sure. Maybe that's higher levels. Whatever the case, it's just it's not going to be boosted by having more armor or magic resist. Although obviously that value does look better if you have more health or lifesteal, so on. Or the opponent just has lower damage or AP values or whatever the case. So now this is kind of cool because it doesn't just give you the armor and magic resist. It swaps the position of your champion and the enemy champion. And I wonder if it actually works for allies or not. It kind of reminds me of the Vengeful Spirit swap from Dota 2, but this spell gets a lot of criticism because it takes forever for it to actually activate. Like it stuns the guy, I guess. Yeah. It stuns them, but then Urgot's not doing anything himself because all he's doing is channeling, I believe, is how it works. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. So in a one-on-one situation, obviously it's fine. If it's 2-on-1, then Urgot's gonna be wrecking that guy because he's stunned and he can't even cleanse out of it. I don't know why they don't buff cleanse, but whatever. So and then you're able to fight him, and he's probably not able to do much damage to you, but he's probably in a worse position for being able to run away because you just swapped him. So, well, he's an interesting champion. I think it's definitely an ability that you have to get used to using. You can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna swap you and then like run back into position or something real quick. It doesn't work that way because there's like a big old delay, and I guess what I'm trying to say is don't use it against like a full enemy team and expect to do some kind of crazy ninja tricks to keep yourself alive. I don't think that's gonna happen. Do it with your team at your back and it'll be much better. So yeah, overall, I would say, Urgot is actually a pretty bad, like, solo laner. Um, but I guess it seems like then that means his best positions are either jungle, which seems pretty. It might actually be pretty good because of his basic ability reducing the damage. Like I said, he can probably solo dragon relatively easily, so he should be able to jungle. Right? I'm not going to say that's necessarily recommended, but it probably works just fine. I would imagine. I haven't tried it yet, but and then as for alternate positions or maybe even primary positions, people have been playing him as marksman, and I would agree with that. That playing with him as a marksman would be all right because you'd have a support to back you up. But like normally in a 2-on-2 situation, I still wouldn't use his ultimate. You probably want to wait until one guy is left the area and then use it. Is most likely the best way to use this, I would imagine. But I could be wrong. 2-on-2 situations might still be pretty solid, but it could still be risky. If you don't know that your ally is nearby, I mean, if you know that your ally is not nearby, and if you don't know if the opponent's, jungler or whoever, if you don't know if he's nearby or not, it could be risky, right? Because then you could end up having two of them beating up on you, right? While you only have your one ally to help you. That's not such a good position to be in. So it could be risky to use as a marksman is what I'm saying, or as a jungler in general. It can be a risky ability. So I guess I'm not really saying anything that any Urgot player doesn't already know. But he does cost 3150 IP, so I wouldn't say that he's as legit of a purchase as, like, say, Blitzcrank, I suppose. But if you are in the market for marksmen, which Blitzcrank obviously isn't, then he's definitely a champion to think about. A lot of the marksmen that are really good are actually more expensive than he is in IP, as far as I'm aware. Um, Now, how does he compare to somebody like Ash? Well, they kind of do completely different things. Urgot is kind of like he's got a much. I don't want to explain him. Well, he's got a lot more defense than Ash, that's for sure. So he's kind of more like, well, you know how Varus has his ultimate that can just like it ensnares one guy and then it'll ensnare his buddy and ensnare somebody else too if they're also nearby, and so it just kind of like it could be nice for Varus to even make a getaway, I guess, of sorts, because they can't chase him if they're ensnared, right? With this guy, he just attacks everything, and everything does 15% less damage to him, and it's a lot harder for them to kill him, isn't it? Ashe doesn't really have anything like that. The closest thing she has to something like that is just reducing their movement speed heavily, I guess. With her volley along with her first skill being maxed out, and that's really not the same thing. It is a lot simpler to use than like Varus's ultimate, for example, and that's nice. But like overall, your main thing with Ashe is you want to do like a burst of damage, and that's not necessarily what Urgot's all about. Urgot's more about sustained damage, and just doing the status effects on the opponents. Like minus armor, slow, the minus damage, all that. So Urgot's a little bit more like Varus in that regard than somebody like Ashe. But at the same time, I would say you want to probably make sure that you play him on a free-to-play week before you commit to buying him, and just practice him a lot. Otherwise, I don't think he's worth the purchase, even though he's only 3150. But yeah. So, since we have gone through all those guys, and I just realized I didn't go over Cho'Gath. I wonder if I should go over him. Nah, I'll wait until next episode. So, next episode I will be covering, or maybe the one after. Well, anyway, I'm gonna go over Vladimir. I'm gonna try giving. I need to play him a bit more. I've played him in the past, but I've not had success with him. I'm gonna try to get the hang of him, even if I don't think I'll ever particularly like him. I'm gonna play him a bit more because he seems like a cool champion, and I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. Whatever. So I've already taken some notes on him, and as far as I can tell, the only stuff he really scales on is health and ability power. But I'm not too sure about that, and even after I play him a bunch, I probably will still not know a lot of stuff about him, I'm assuming. Anyway, I want to go over him and Xin Zhao, I guess, because yeah, he's been a really interesting champion, honestly. I think I understand why he's been a problem for me in general. During this free-to-play week, a lot of people have been playing him, and he's been tough to deal with. And I think I finally know why after I've taken some notes with him, and also kind of understand a bit better why I was kind of messing up with him, and why what other people have been doing has actually worked better. So yeah, we're gonna go over Xin Zhao and Vladimir and possibly one other champ next episode. So this has been episode 21 of From Dota to League, and we'll catch you guys later.